Hi, I'm Stephanie Trillo, and I'm going to talk to you today about our rights with special education and its brief history. Prior to the 1970s, special education didn't really exist. We had made great strides as far as civil rights activism, but we really hadn't encompassed those with disabilities. Judy Heumann, who's a huge activist, had said that around 1952, when she was entering into kindergarten, she was told that because she was in a wheelchair, that she wouldn't be allowed in the school because she was considered a fire hazard. Instead, they sent somebody to her about a year later who spent about 2 to 3 hours a week with her in two separate visits to educate her. That's all she got every week was 3 hours. And that was considered services provided. In 1965, we had the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and that just really guaranteed that all children would have access to a quality education despite they were underprivileged or not. In 1975, Congress enacted the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. So nearly a decade later, they realized that they forgot to include these children in it. But the only problem with this is as of 1975, they still couldn't even physically get into the building most of the time without somebody physically carrying them in. It wasn't until the sit-in that vamped the Section 504 signing in April of 1977 that we finally had some action made. This was something that had been tabled since 1973 and basically just sat there with nothing happening. This gave access to any building, guaranteed access to any building for anybody with a disability, which meant they had to provide ramps or whatnot so that they could physically get inside. This included schools. It was a huge step in actually being able to get inside the doors. It wasn't until 2004, though, that we really moved forward with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. And this included reading, early detection, and research-based instruction with highly qualified educators. They basically had two goals. One was to provide an education so students were able to further their education if they wanted to, such as being able to go to college. A second was that they'd be able to get a job. And the third was that they could handle independent living. Prior to that, really, special education was just learning how to count change so you could work at the Goodwill. The second goal for the IDA Act of 2004 was to protect the rights of both children and parents. And this really played in a lot because we started seeing like speech teachers who were being sued by their employer because they were advocating for their students. That happened in 2001 with Fales versus Garst. And with the ABA versus Levas in 2003, we saw parents that were suing their schools because they didn't provide them with adequate education for their students. And so they were forced to educate their children on their own dime, and they sued for compensation. So we really start seeing a lot of this happening where the parents are trying to do best by their child, and they're being the best advocate they could be. And they really had to go someplace, and these went all the way up to the Supreme Court before they got the rulings that they needed. And it's not just the parents, it was also the educators. And if you're interested in learning more about this, I highly suggest that you look up Rights Law, that's WRIGHTS. There is a ton of information there for past, present, and future legal matters as far as educational services go. And for local here in North Carolina, I prefer to look at the Education Law Center of North Carolina. It has a list of current and noteworthy cases from the North Carolina past. And if you're just wanting to keep abreast of all of the legal trends and things happening across the nation, check out the special education section of the Education Week's webpage. They really keep on top of everything. It's always fresh and you always will learn something new there. Thank you and have a great time.